So welcome everybody to the virtual Rec Innovation Lab at San Diego Miramar. Welcome especially to our guest speakers. Nice haircut, Mike. You just saw that, looking good. Looking good.
Thank you, it's fresh.
No more COVID here. So we've done lots of workshops. I think 7 in total.
Mine is COVID hair. I cut it myself last week.
Did you? I cut mine also. So it looks good though. It looks good, Louis. With us today, we have the Proven Recruiting team. We have Mike Chip, Michelle Pencer, and then the CEO of Proven, Louis Song. Like I said, I think we've done, is that 7 workshops together, right? Something like this since we started?
I think we have 4 planned. We've done 3 in the past. So I think it will be 7, but
Will
then
be
so
7.
far probably like 3 or 4. Yeah. So
I love it. Every workshop that we do together is just they're amazing. They're great, and I think you will all enjoy this workshop in particular. So with that, I think I'm going to just pass it on to you and let you. Oh, before we do this. A survey that Stephen will be administering in the chat so that we can get feedback. But other than that, I think we're good to go.
One quick note about the survey. If you do take the survey at the end of the semester, we are going to be giving out a gift card. And the more surveys you take with these workshops, the more chances you will have to get this gift card. The amount, $50, $100, who knows? Just know it's going to be enough to make it worth your while.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate that. With that, let me introduce the team. So Mike, Michelle, and Louis, take it away from here. It's all you. It's all you.
perfect. All right. So let me share my screen here.
Perfect.
Give me one moment. All right.
And we'll have some people coming in as we go. I'm going to actually mute myself so you don't have to hear the dinging. If you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, everyone, or just shout them out, right?
Can you see the screen? My main screen and not note screens, I guess.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, cool. All right. So to kick off, basically, one of the main things I think when we were kind of discussing with Rex, in general, of like a topic that does come up often, especially for startups, especially for companies, especially for people when they introduce themselves and talk about their background, is this concept of storytelling, right? And so if you, the title specifically says, if you told your story, who would anybody care, right? And I think an important component of that is the art of telling a story and telling a compelling story that attracts people. So I will shift over here to the next slide. We'll do some quick intros. You can start with Michelle if you're on here.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm Proven Recruiting's manager of content and culture, which means marketing and like internal events, cultural, whatever. A lot of the strategies we're going to be talking about today are things we've directly applied to our marketing stuff, our website, our LinkedIn, our messaging. Everything we're going to talk about is directly from our own experience. And I'll point out as we go, like in what ways we've used them, but just know these are tested by us. So hopefully it's all good advice. Mike, over to you.
Thank you. So Mike, if you have seen me in definitely other workshops that I've helped run with Louis and other members of my team, finance and accounting recruiter at Proven, and with Proven for like 3 years or so, but also spearhead some of the DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion, community events and involvement with Proven Recruiting. I've been doing that ever since probably in the past couple of years or so. So definitely not only am I a recruiter, but outside of that, definitely try to contribite to helping out in the community and doing workshops like this.
I was going to say one thing really quickly. That's actually how we met. I'm remembering now. We met through a DEI award that we were both nominated for this award, and we connected after that. It was through San Diego Business Journal. So when you said that, I remember that. So
yeah, it's such a small world. I think back of how like we all come together, and it's always sometimes one instance that just kind of brings to fruition all these great things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now to Louis, resident DJ.
I play music here at Proven.
This is
I
true.
select the music. I decide what gets on where. I actually have business cards somewhere that say resident DJ as well. So I'm not joking when I say that my title is resident DJ. I happen to be one of the owners as well. I was not, as I think I've said in one of our previous presentations, I was not born a 50-year-old, now 52-year-old CEO. I was born in Korea, came to the States when I was 5, didn't speak English, didn't speak for like a year. My parents never made more than $20 an hour. And now one of the owners of Proven Recruiting. So, well, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Lewis. All right, so we'll get started. Lewis, after you.
Okay, so for those of you guys that have been in some of our previous presentations, I like pictures. So instead of sharing a bunch of screens with words, which will come up later, I decided that we would start with a couple of some of the most popular stories that have ever been told, or at least from a modern standpoint. So here we've got, anybody familiar with Finding Nemo? I don't like being the only person on screen, by the way. Am I the only person on screen? Okay, there you go. Thank you. I don't like talking to myself here. So we got Finding Nemo, and although the title is a little misleading, the hero of that story is Marlin, and as the caption there says, for those of you guys have, I wish we could see the audience. Could we see the people or no? Is that too many people?
If you did, I mean, you could try. It might put a little bit of a.
No, this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. So maybe I'll pick on Stephen and Angela as well, and Steve.
Right.
But you know, Finding Nemo, it starts really actually with a very emotional beginning, where Marlin and his wife are hanging out, and all of a sudden the eel shows up and wipes out all their eggs except for one, and Marlin's wife dies as well. And so it's a pretty scary way to start a kids, what's effectively a kids movie. But then, you know, we'll get into it, but it really is an engrossing way to start a film. And I actually purposefully, when I introduced myself, started with where I started from as well, instead of who I am today. And if I started off by saying co-founder, CEO, Proven Recruiting, there's already an assumption of success with the title, as opposed to starting off as an immigrant born in Korea, having come over at the age of 5, not having spoken English or spoken anything my first year here in this country. And then we got Luke Skywalker, one of my favorite films of all time, when I was, I think, 9 or 10 years old when I first saw this film. He's already an orphan, and he's on a really crappy desert planet. And all of a sudden he goes out and he comes back to find that his aunt and uncle are killed as well. And then the rest of the story unfolds. But these are two, and there's plenty of other stories that are out there, and whether The Matrix is another one. For those of you guys that are familiar with The Matrix, Neo is just kind of hanging out in his office cubicle, having his home life, and all of a sudden, I don't know what they're called, but those guys show up. Mr. Smith and his cadre show up, and he's getting guided by the voice on the phone, who ultimately ends up being Morpheus. I think that's his name. So you know, if you look at all of the major blockbuster stories, what we're ultimately going to find and try to demonstrate to you guys today is that there is a consistent pattern of storytelling. And it's something that can be replicated by all of us as we share our stories, whether they're as individuals or as entrepreneurs trying to sell, not physically sell our companies, but sell the services of our company and or our businesses. Okay, next slide. All right, so and then along comes a guide. So in this story, Dory, Ellen DeGeneres, happens to be the guide in Finding Nemo for for what's his name again? I forgot. His father, Nemo's father. I'll just refer to him as Marlin. And then you've got in Luke Skywalker, the original guide happens to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, who ends up helping Luke Skywalker ultimately to start becoming a Jedi, and then Yoda becomes the guide later on as Obi-Wan gets killed. So in almost every single story that you see, you know, like I mentioned earlier with Neo in the Matrix, there is a guide that comes along to help out, to be that person, because they can't ultimately, as a protagonist, you can't ultimately do this on your own. So next slide. And then there's growth, personal growth, developing of skills along the way. You know, I didn't all of a sudden go from being $50,000 in student loan debt to becoming the CEO of Proven Recruiting. There were decades of personal growth and challenges and setbacks, or just growth that I went through. Initial growth, getting out of school, and then getting a job. You know, and whether it's in Nemo and Marlin getting out of his little enclave, his little area that he's, you know, totally safe, or Luke Skywalker getting out of Tatooine and then becoming a Jedi with Yoda, and ultimately a fighter pilot, I guess, as well. That was one part of the story that just like all of a sudden just became a fighter pilot out of nowhere, space fighter pilot, without having trained at all. So I guess that's the Force. But anyway, next slide.
All right. So as we kind of walk through some of the pictures that Lewis was talking about, Finding Nemo, also Star Wars, you know, what makes a good story, right? That's the main question. And we kind of break down the elements in the next few slides. But one of the main things that, as you think about humans, you know, we're coded to see the world in narrative form and story form. And so, you know, in these stories, you give them what they want, right? So we're telling these stories from like a movie perspective or a book. Narrative form helps to kind of paint that picture. And so some of the elements, as we kind of talked about and broke it down a little bit, each of these different, I guess, breakdown scenes is, you know, there's a hero, there's an adversary or adversity, right, that they have to face. There's a villain. I don't know if we talked about the villains in the beginning, but there's a villain. I think in Nemo, there's an element of the unknown. I think Darth Vader for Star Wars, and then the Matrix. I think there's so many different, the guys in the suits. I don't know what they're called, the Smiths, right? And then, you know, as you kind of approach, you know, when you kind of identify these in the beginning of the story, there's a helper and a guide. They almost call it like a Sherpa, right? That helps you throughout telling the story and helping them kind of get through the adversity and the setbacks. Then you face a little more setbacks and adversity kind of through after with your guide and your helper. And then you go through an element of personal and professional growth where they kind of come to a realization or an epiphany that their guide has helped them through, or some type of something that they're overcoming with, and then they're happy with their outcome. So at the end is kind of like the happy outcome that comes with the result that, you know, the kind of the story ends with. So if you think about it, as there's a beginning, a middle, and end, and you know, when it comes to these specific things in these stories, and when we tell our stories, and when we think about telling our stories about our companies or telling our stories about our individual personalities and who we are, you know, you practice on being concise and keeping these elements are important, right? Because at the end of the day, think about the meat of when you tell a good story, it's universality, right? Which is connecting with each individual and being relatable. And when you can relate, whether it's through emotion or through the story that you tell, you know, conveying an emotion, that's where, you know, people get drawn in. And this is basically this playbook that Hollywood has, even when books are written, that basically makes them so successful, right? So we'll go off to Michelle after this and kind of more detail about telling the story. Hey, Lewis, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, we might be getting to this later. I just don't want to get too far ahead, but I think one of the most important elements of telling a story is to tell the story in a way from the very beginning where the hero is ultimately the audience. And so as, you know, and I think we're going to get to this in a second here, but as far as understanding who your audience is going to be a huge part of this, but it's not about selling yourself as the ultimate hero of this whole story. It's really positioning yourself as the guide. And so let's get to the next slide. Oh, here we go.
And here it is. Well done, Louis.
Next slide. Next slide, Michelle.
No, I have more comments. But going off what Louis said, like knowing your audience is pretty well the most important thing you can do when crafting your story. I saw in the chat, someone said that Finding Nemo, the enemy or the villain is us humans, which is totally true. That is the overarching enemy if you're looking for a message to the movie. But if you're looking at Marlin as a character and he's our audience and he's the hero, his enemy is not humans. It's the unknown. It's letting go. It's whatever. I don't remember, but humans, I don't think killed his kids. Humans didn't do all this stuff. He's just scared of everything. So he personally has a different villain and a different story arc than maybe some other character in the movie. So knowing exactly who you're talking to will really determine the kind of things you're going to want to bring up. If you were selling to Marlin, then you would want to be selling to his fears of the unknown and trying to assuage those fears. If you were selling to Nemo, you would want to be talking about his drive for adventure, which obviously if you brought up to Marlin would not go over well. So again, the person is the hero. You are never the hero. You being the company or you personally. Or let's take a step back. There's two kinds of stories that you might want to tell in a business context. It'd be the story of yourself and your professional development. That would probably be if you're selling yourself, you're looking to get a job or you're looking to get an investment or something. And then there's the brand / company story, which you would be telling if you're looking to hire people or if you're trying to get customers. But all of these stories, no matter what the story is about, you or the company, are going to follow the same principles where you are not the hero. Whoever you're talking to is the hero. You are a guide, and your job is to take the hero to help them get somewhere, right? Like everyone wants to go on a journey. Everyone wants to transform over time. That's what heroes do. Heroes aren't born perfect. They're usually filled with self-doubt, like Marlin is originally. Sorry, I cannot reference Star Wars because I don't know the plot well enough. So I'm just going full in with Finding Nemo. But heroes are flawed, and then they have a helper, a guide, or whatever, and they self-actualize into a better, happier version of themselves with still room to grow, but in a much better place. So just knowing that kind of format and being able to tap into that, that thing that's coded in all humans that we all want to follow that kind of journey. If you can do that, you're going to be speaking a language that everyone kind of knows in their DNA. Everyone can respond to that. So yeah, how can you help them progress in their journey? These are the questions you should be asking yourself. And what vision opportunities do you offer? A kind of aspirational self. What can they be in the future and how can you help them get there? That's the kind of thing you would want to chart as you're figuring out the story that you're going to tell, either in an interview setting or in a selling setting or in a hiring setting. No matter what, these are the same questions. We're going to go through more at the bottom with the ask yourself. So first, I think you want to look inwards before you start telling your story outwards. So you go through these kind of questions. How did you get started? Why? What held you back? Really focus in on those struggles. Then what changed since then? How have you grown? Where are you going next? And what do you stand for? Probably the most important question, because anyone who's going to go on a journey wants it to be meaningful. People don't want to work as an accountant at your company. That sounds boring. People want to join a team that is changing the world. So if you can frame your proposition in terms of something people really want and can tap into this like base desire to do good, be better, whatever, you're going to have a lot more success. I mean, we can look at Proven, like a recruiting firm. If we told people when you work here, you get to look for candidates on LinkedIn, send them, copy paste a message to them, and then input them in a data source and then talk to them sometimes. That sounds awful. But if you just change that around and you say, like our tagline says, elevate life through meaningful work, and you tap into that kind of idea that we're helping people change their lives, suddenly you have a much more appealing company. And you can do that to pretty well any company. You can do that to, I read somewhere like a dog food company. That sounds not super interesting to work at a dog food company, But if you frame it as, you know, be your dog's hero, suddenly you're like, I want to be my dog's hero. So just changing that kind of frame of mind and finding like a purpose. And we'll talk a little more later about like finding your why and being able to translate that into something that you can communicate. But that makes a huge difference. Does anyone want to add anything on this slide? No. Okay. Next
Great
slide.
job, Michelle.
Thanks. Going well.
Yeah, great job.
Okay, so here we're just going to go deeper into knowing your audience. So obviously you want to know who you're talking to. One thing I would recommend is kind of to get into your audience's head. Think about how they would want to be described, like the actual words, maybe even write them down. At the same time, do like a before and after mapping of before they interact with you and after they interact with your product and what that might look like so that you can really understand the arc that they're going through or that you hope they're going through. So those are 2 tips that I would add in here. I don't know, I can read this stuff out. So who are you speaking to? Try to figure out who they are on a personal, professional, and interest level. Again, I would write these things down, even like in a grid, just so you can really see who your people are. A lot. Some of it will be guessing. Some of it can be market research, talk to your people. A lot of it is kind of common knowledge once you start thinking about it, but we don't naturally think about it. If your customer or your employee or whatever, who are they on a personal, professional, interest level, you can figure a lot of that out from what job they're doing, what university they went to, having a 5-minute conversation with them, as you probably would in an interview setting. You can figure out a lot of that stuff. At what stage are they in their life? So just, are they married? Are they single? Do they have kids? At what age are they? Well, there's a lot of commonalities just in these like broad categories that will tell you a lot about your customer / audience / whatever you're looking for right here.
So Michelle,
yeah,
just to help you
yes,
up
please.
on the monologue here.
Thank you.
So are we talking knowing whether or not it's a woman, it's a man?
Yes. Yes. I mean, if you can track in your sales or in your hiring or whatever that men and women interact with your brand in different ways, then absolutely, that's very important information. Definitely, if all the broad categories, you want to understand that stuff. You don't have to write down woman, man, but make the connection in your head of what does that imply. If it's a woman, does she have enjoy a different sales process? Do you have anything to add there? You're on mute though.
For me personally, I think it's really important because we're going to do a different session on selling as a minority to the majority. And understanding who your audience is demographically, I think is extremely important. If, for example, one of the reasons why I talk about this is the regional economic, sorry, I always forget to see.
Someone help him. That's not me.
Regional economic.
Are you talking about the REC, the reg?
Yeah.
Regional Entrepreneurship Center.
Entrepreneur Center. Okay, so it's about people who are trying to build their own businesses, and there are people who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and maybe even in their 50s. Okay.
Even later.
Even later, and understanding that there is a wide range of people here as far as ages are concerned, but everyone is trying to build something. And knowing the amount of doubt, insecurity, financial, mental stress that everyone is going through, and sharing that same journey that I've been on myself personally. Okay, when we started this business, my boys were 1 and 2. I emptied out my 401k. I didn't pay myself for almost 2 years. My wife quit her job to make it even more interesting. And we now have built a business, and we almost went out of business in 2013 because one of our clients stopped paying us for 2 months because they moved their systems from the US to China or to India. But here we are after a pandemic, and we're having our best year ever. And we're, for the first time ever, about to hit over $20 million in revenue. And this is for a company that's 14 years old, started by 2 guys who kind of sort of knew what they were doing, but not really. They never started a real company before. And so, just being able to tell that story in a way to relate it to the individuals is one of the most important things, to be able to say, hey, I've been where you are. Okay, and now I'm going to play the role as a guide, because you need to be the heroes of your own story. Okay, you need to be the heroes of your own story, and I am now participating as a guide to your story. But the hard part of all of this storytelling is that when you tell your stories, you have to tell it from the perspective of being the guide and not the hero. And this is where the brain, the mind, whatever thing gets a little bit tricky. So anyway, Michelle?
Yeah, well, I will point out though that you make a very good example of yourself as a guide. Like the two defining things of a guide are showing empathy and showing authority. Like that's what all of us need to do when we're trying to communicate a story where we are the guide and someone else is the hero. We have to show empathy by saying we've been there, we've traveled that same journey, we've had that same struggle. If you did not do that, you can't say that.
And I was flawed.
And you were flawed. You're a past hero that can now give your own authority. So that's the second part, authority. That now you know what to do. Now you have the information. Now you run a company that helps people find jobs, and you want to impart that information to people. So those are the two things you want to prove, but that validate through the storytelling. The empathy, the authority, and then what kind of journey can you help your hero go on? And I don't want to say take your hero on, because you're not pulling them along. It's they have to self-determine their future, and you are there just to guide. I know language, I think, is really important. So I think that's a distinction that is worth making. You're not taking them on it, you're helping them move through their own journey. Okay, back to the slide for just another minute. Was there anything else I would like to say here? Just understanding what transformation is going to take place, not in a guessing kind of way, but in a you figured it out kind of way, where you understand, here's where people start, here's how they interact with me and my brand, and here's how they will end up, because I've spoken to people and I know where this ends, so that you can give them a vision of the future. That's one of the most important things, not to leave them hanging, not to leave them guessing. You're the source of confidence. People come in confused or lost or aimless or whatever, or have a specific problem depending on what your company does. And you are a source of confidence, of calm authority, of like, they're so happy to have found a lifeline. That is the ideal situation. So knowing where they want to go, helping them get there, and making sure it's them who's getting there. It's them on their own journey, and it's you just there to give them a boost. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so then here we have some like overarching keys to success in your storytelling. We've gone through the specific steps that you want to touch on, those universal narrative structural things of hero, adversity, villain, setbacks, already forgot the rest, happy ending eventually, guide, very importantly, after I've harped on that so much. And then here's some larger things that you can apply to tell your story even better. So when you're coming up with your story, a good place to start is figuring out what your strengths are, either as an individual or a company, depending on the situation. And a way to do that would be to kind of complete the sentence to yourself. I'm good at helping people, or I'm good at helping companies, blank. And this can be useful in an interview situation. If someone asks you, tell me about yourself, because that's a question that often will lead you to talk about yourself, which is not the point. As with every story, you're supposed to be turning it around, flipping it on them, and talking about how you can help them. So this is a good way to segue into, oh, you asked me to talk about myself. Actually, here's what I am really good at. It's helping you. And then you can go into detail about that. It's also good. Yeah.
So let me just interrupt here for a second, because I think, this question came about from the standpoint of putting together an elevator pitch. And I think maybe even Rec has done that. I know we've done that. But I think most elevator pitches are flawed. And the reason I say that is because it's focused on the individual and or the company in a way that says, hey, look how good we are. Okay, look at me, look at me, look at me. Okay, so for example, we used to say Proven Recruiting is one of the most awarded companies in San Diego. We've been one of the best places to work for every year that we've been eligible for 13 years running, one of the fastest growing companies, #1 or #2 in permanent placement. One of the top 5 consulting firms. We've got 5 locations around the US, San Diego, Dallas, LA, I don't know where else, Austin, somewhere else. So it's a constant, you know, like if you were dating, it'd be like the same as I got a big house, I make a lot of money, I drive a Ferrari. I don't know, what else you want to know? None of those things are true, but you know, got $2 million in my bank or $10 million in my bank. You know, and it's like, I'm so great. Don't you want to date me? Don't you want to buy my services? Don't you want to work at my company? Okay. And nobody likes to hear that stuff, really. And so the focus really turns it around to say, Proven Recruiting is really good at helping companies find the best people in finance, technology, and accounting, so that you guys can focus on your jobs of, for example, with Qualcomm, making the best chips in the world. Okay. Or, for example, BD, okay, Biogen, well, it used to be Cardinal Health here in San Diego, focus on making the best IV software in the market, okay, intravenous software. So it's really about helping the clients do their jobs better, do their services better, as opposed to touting what it is that you do or that we do. It's about helping them become the best versions of themselves. I hope that makes sense.
It also helps you eliminate kind of useless noise from your messaging, your marketing, your website, everywhere. Once you zero in on your strengths or what you have to offer, or if we go all the way down to the bottom of that list, what you stand for, we'll go into that in more detail in a few seconds. But once you zero in on that messaging, you just get rid of all the stuff that no one wants to read, the stuff that they scroll through. If on our website, like Lewis said, it used to be very prominent, the kind of information that no one cares about. Now you have to go and click on About Us to find any of that stuff, because the only people that are going to put in that level of commitment are people who want to work for us. And we understand that now. Originally, we were like, oh, everyone's going to be interested in our whole journey to becoming this company. But that was making us the hero and not the people who are actually coming to our website, which are clients and candidates. So it really helps reduce noise, which is, I don't know, I think one of the biggest problems with company websites. You know, you go to them and you just can't even find the information that you want. And instead, you know, every part of their history. So you can avoid that. Don't be that company. Okay, moving on to contextualize. We did go into detail about this already, but don't jump to the happy ending. If Finding Nemo started with him being reunited with his dad, that would be a terrible story. Or the empire being triumphed over. I don't really know the end of Star Wars.
The Death Star being blown up.
Okay, thank you. Clearly not familiar with that story. But if it started at the end, no one would want to watch it. Like Lewis said, always introducing himself. He was not born a 50-something CEO who runs a company. Again, very boring story that no one can relate to. No one feels, oh, I'm also just like a genius and got a great company and have everything working out for me. So the painting those struggles is what engages people. It's what they can buy into. It's what makes an interesting story. So don't skip through to the good parts, even if that is your natural tendency, because that's where you are now, or it just, you like, every human naturally wants to sound good and impressive. So we go to the good parts, but actually all the bad parts are where the interest is. Quantify. So using specific examples, data points, to strengthen the impact of your story. This is where you would maybe want to bring up awards, which we no longer have on the main page of our website, because they sound conceited and whatever. But people do want to validate information. They want to validate that you're a good company to work with. Having them at the bottom, having them somewhere so that people can see. Another good place to quantify is get Google reviews, get Yelp reviews. That's just proof that you are what you say you are. Asking people for them, they're very happy to provide. And then you have other people telling your story for you, which is much more believable than the company itself telling its story. So yeah, go rack up those Google reviews and Yelp reviews. They're not that difficult to get once you ask. Chart a future, self-explanatory. You we've gone over this a bunch of times. Take the transformation somewhere, paint a picture of what people's lives will look like once they work with you, and keep that picture as broad as possible, not just, oh, you no longer will have this very minuscule software problem that my company solves, but you will have less stress. You'll be a better manager. You'll have more time to do other stuff in your life. These big problems that people want to solve, not just the little thing that you might be working on, even though that little thing is really important, but that's not what's going to click with them and make them want to work with you. And then finally, know what you
Hey,
stand
Michelle.
for.
Hey, Michelle,
Yeah.
before you go on, I think, you know,
Yep.
one of the most important things as an entrepreneur, if for those of you guys that are going to start your own companies or even running your own companies today, is one of the most difficult challenges is actually hiring people. It is scaling, growing, hiring people. It's a whole nother level of complexity. And, you know, if we were to hire people here at Proven and we were to tell them, one of their questions is, so by the way, what does my future look like? Well, you're going to do this job for the rest of your life here. They won't be here very long. Or, you know, however you're living today, you're living in an apartment, 1 bedroom, sharing it with 3 people in PB. That's how you're going to be for the next 20 years. Okay, because you're not going to make a dime more with us, and you're going to have no career trajectory. You're going to be in that same place and partying and doing all the things that you do today for the rest of your life. Okay, that would not fly. And so one of the most important things that you're going to do as an entrepreneur, as somebody who is going to be hiring people, is to provide them a trajectory both inside and outside of work. What is their life going to look like as a result of working with the company? And that could be from an income standpoint, it could be from where they live standpoint, it could be the type of house they live in, it could be how they're helping their parents, how they're helping their community, how they're giving back. It could be being debt-free, financial independence by the age of 30 or 40 or 50, whatever their age, whatever their goals are. But I think this is one of the most important things that I don't know that people do well as part of telling a story, and when they're attracting, whether it's customers or employees, is, you know, the reason I want to buy your software is because right now our internal organization is a mess. And by buying your software, what I hope you're going to sell me is a future where we have a lot less complexity, we're being a lot more efficient, and we're growing a lot faster as a result of using your software. That's the same type of vision that you've got to be able to communicate both on a personal level as well as on a business level, regardless of whether you're selling your company for people to work at or whether you're selling your company for people to buy your services and or software or product.
Yeah, and that ties in completely to the know what you stand for, which is essentially think about, understand, and be able to communicate your deeper why as a company, as a team, as an individual. Because people want to buy into something that is not surface level. People want to find meaning in their work, in their product, in their mission, in their whatever they're engaging in. They don't want to see it as just an exchange of money or goods or services or whatever. I mean, that's also useful, but ideally they're engaging in something actually meaningful to them personally. So that's the figure out your why and make that the center of everything. Make that the center of your website, make that the center of your messaging. Like a why that is universal, a why that people can get involved in. Like I said earlier, ours is elevate life through meaningful work, not come and be a recruiter and sit at a desk and source candidates. Because that's something that people can buy into. And that's exactly, as Lewis was saying, like the hiring issue. You have to have something that people want to be involved in, a passionate cause. Even if you are a seemingly boring company, as you might say recruiting is, everything is helping people in some way. That's why that company exists. It solves some kind of problem that is nagging at people, no matter how small or big. It'll have an effect on their life, and figuring out what that impact is, what the why is for you, for your customers, for your employees, that really drives the story home. So
one of the questions that was posed to me, I think I can't remember which book it was. It might have been Scaling Up, but I don't know that that's for a fact. But the question that was posed in this book was, who would care if your company went out of business? Other than yourself, other than your parents, your family, who would really care? You know, and the way that I posed this question to myself was, who would care if Proven went out of business? Does the world need another recruiting firm? And the answer really is no. Okay. But the question that I posed instead was, or I thought of was, does the world need a good place to work? And the answer is absolutely yes. And that was one of our whys. You know, it's why it's on the back of our Yetis and stuff. Elevate life through meaningful work. Because what we do is we help companies find the best people to help make the best products and help put out the best services. We help them match up with the best people that are out there to make sure that they build the best teams, and we help people find the best jobs. And you know, for those of you guys that are trying to find a job and or in a bad job, it's a really stressful situation. You know, it sucks to be in a bad job or in not getting paid enough, or to work with bad bosses and bad team members. And so it's a really, if you look at it from that standpoint, if being in a bad job or being in a bad company with bad people, with bad everything or anything, it can affect how you live your life on a day-to-day basis, both emotionally, physically, and mentally, or all three of those. So I think what we do, while it's not brain surgery, while it's not medical, you know, healthcare, I think ultimately it is really something that's important in the course of everyone's everyday life. So that's what we stand for.
I love it.
I know you do. That's why
Well,
you work here.
it's not. I'm not just saying that, by the way. All right. So
He gets paid to say that, by the way. So,
oh yeah, sure.
Not
All right,
sure,
so
you do actually. So
I do. All right. So I don't know if you want to add some context to this, but I'll add this it's a video here.
all right. So am I supposed to play this now? Is that?
I can play it. More so, just is there any context to it, or just play it?
Yeah, no, I'll play. I'll provide a little bit of context. So I think Apple, I forgot what it was. I just read some more news. I mean, they're about to come out with their new iPhones tomorrow and new possible watch and other stuff. It's one of the brands, I think, that has done one of the most amazing jobs of positioning themselves as the guide. It's not in this specific video, but for those of you that are old enough, there's an ad where there's a silhouette. When iPods first started to come out, they actually became smaller. There was a silhouette of people dancing, listening to music, and having a good time. And the silhouettes were large, and there was a little wired headphone, just like I'm wearing today, and there was a little iPod that the person was holding, or an iPhone. And the whole idea was that could be you. And you're listening to your own music on your own headphones while the rest of the world is doing whatever you're doing, but you're having a great time because you're using an iPhone or an iPod. But you're the hero of that story, and Apple's product happens to be the conduit, the guide, the platform that's being used for it. And so this is just an updated version of that, I think, in my mind, where what they're ultimately showing is an average people making amazing videos. So if you want to roll it from there, Mike.
And action.
Got it.
Make her spin, make it spin. There you go. Gorgeous. That's beautiful.
So I don't know about you guys, but it inspires me to be like, oh, I can make some stuff. I can lay in a 6-foot hole in the ground and have dirt cover over me and have an interesting video. Maybe not exactly, but I thought this was a great example of. I think that's yours, Mike, or somebody's. Okay.
Okay, I just want to point out one thing in that video, which is, I mean, obviously the phone featured prominently, but there was very little about specs or anything. Like they gave us very little tech information. The focus wasn't on teaching us about the phone. The focus was on us thinking we could do these amazing things. Just again, so like even your tool, your software, your company, whatever, it is not the thing you're selling. The thing you're selling is the feeling of the hero accomplishing something.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the tools that they use, whether it was a fishing pole, whether it was, I mean, there was somebody getting carried on a dolly across while they were filming that person running. You know, there's so many tools there. Like, shoot, I could do that. I could put that together. And again, the way they position that, and the way they even tell the story arc in that little tiny commercial, you know, to show how people are making it, some of the trials and tribulations that they're going through to make that. You know, many of the things, the concepts of telling a great story are in that little short commercial, and that was, I think, probably what, a minute, if that. So that is our pitch presentation.
Thank you for pitching your company for us.
I love it. Oh, that was awesome. That was really good. You know, I actually was going to say one of the things that we're doing coming up here really soon at the RAC is people are making commercials for their startups. And so kind of actually is a perfect timing that we talked about this, because it's always difficult for me when we're doing things like storyboarding. Like, how do I, like, what do you put on there? What do you include? What do you say to get people to understand your company? And so I think that this was really relevant and this was helpful. So thank you.
You know, when we first started the company, the core audience of what we were selling and how we were pitching it was new prospective employees.
Mm-hmm.
And as we got bigger, that turned to more the client companies that were hiring and more the candidates that we were working with,
Yeah.
that we work with. And so, you know, I think it's such an important aspect of the storytelling on, number one, really deciding who your audience is and what their issues are,
Yeah.
what their challenges are.
Right.
And so, you know, if whether it's a service, whether it's a product, what is the thing that you guys are helping them figure out? And that's what the story should be focused on. That's
How
your
are you solving their problem, right?
Yeah.
And that problem can change. Like you said, it's maybe one thing right now, but later.
Yeah, I mean the service, the solution that you provide as a company can change, and your audience, your focus can change from a recruiting audience or an employee audience to an external you know, customer audience. But understanding who your audience is and who you're trying to get as customers, whether they're employees as new graduates or seasoned employees who have had 20 years of experience, that, you know, you got to position your company, yourself differently.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a really important part of when you guys put these videos together. Does it speak to the people that are going to watch?
Mm-hmm.
And how it solves their problems? And if it doesn't, if it just touts, here's how great we are,
Yeah.
Nobody really cares.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Apple could have told us they have, I think, $150 billion in cash as a company.
I don't
That's
care.
great. You know, their phones now has a 12-hour battery life. I mean, I guess that's kind of good, because although that's not true, it doesn't ever seem to last more than 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But all those things, I think, you know, as you think about what you're going to put out to the world, how does your service product solve problems? And then understanding being able to say, okay, here's what the problem looks like today from what we understand, and here's where we can help, and here's what your future is going to look like as a result of working with our company, our service, our product.
I love that, painting the picture of where they're going to be because they are working with you. I love it. I think for me that makes a lot of sense. So I know we don't have a whole lot of time left. I want to make sure that we have time for
Yeah.
questions.
We have one question in chat, and Jeff has his hand raised. So let's get to the question in chat first. So Steve asks, a key part to recruiting is filtering out any toxic personalities, and I know storytelling can help with that. Any thoughts on how do you prevent these folks from like slipping through the cracks, or how to catch these before you get them? Because once a toxic person enters the workplace, it spreads like wildfire. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I, having now worked in a really large billion-dollar company and now having our own, I think, I hate to say this, but I think there's always going to be a level of negativity that is present from people. Just human beings by nature complain and whine about stuff, and but then you get, and my belief was that there's always a, if you spread it around a number of people, it kind of just is a low grade negativity and low grade toxicity that doesn't really rise above a certain level. But then all of a sudden somebody comes in and they gather it all up, and it's almost like they suck the negativity and toxicity out of everybody else, and they're just like the sole villain person. And I think my experience has been that you don't know that person is that person until they've been there for a couple of years. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, I didn't hire you. You're not the person I hired. What the hell happened? And the ones that are obvious are easy to avoid.
Easy to weed out, right? Yeah.
Okay, they're easy to avoid.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that grow up in your company and they become so crucial and critical. They're the number one person, or whatever the case might be. They're critical to your operations. That's what's really difficult. If you can identify those people early on, they talk I, and all of their stories. I did this, I did that. Okay, I was the lead. Okay, versus we, as part of a team, we did these things. We helped the customer. Okay, and again, you can tell. Tell me about a time when, as part of a team, where you guys fixed a problem for a solution. Or my favorite question these days is, tell me about the last time. Tell me about the last placement you made. Tell me about the last customer you helped. Tell me about the last real major issue that you faced. How was it? Where was it? Who'd you do it with? Okay, what was your part? What was the other team player's part? Okay, what were some of the issues that you ran into? And then what was the resolution? But really looking for this is how we work together. This is what my role was within the context of a team. Okay. As opposed to, well, look at my award, look at, I won this, I got this, and all the things that somehow we're kind of actually taught to be that way, but it really doesn't help us when we're in the working world.
Yeah, good advice. I know we have a couple more questions, a couple hands up. I want to make sure we have time to get to all of them. Jeff, if you wanted to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing, Tanya? My name is Jeff Mata. I actually am also a entrepreneur that has also spoke here for the rec, which I love you guys, by the way. So real quickly, I believe it was Michelle talking about when you are in a job interview and they ask you to tell you about themselves, and she talked about strengths. I do agree with that, but I also want to object and say, because you can start wherever, perhaps asking the question on where you want me to start to get a better idea, because I can tell you from the time that I was conceived to all the awards and achievements and accolades I've done, and it would just kind of go out the door, where you can just be very direct and ask them, okay, well, what do you want to know about me, or where do you want me to start? I believe that is really good. Another thing too, I love the storytelling. There's always that saying, facts tell, but stories sell. And one last thing, this is for you, Stephen. I know you always want books. I think this book would be great for this presentation. I'm not sure if any of you have read it. It's by Kendra, Kindra Hall, and it's called Stories That Stick: How Storytelling Can Captivate Customers, Influence Audiences, and Transform Your Business. But great presentation. I just want to give you guys kudos and keep on doing your work.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Good to hear from
Thanks,
you.
Jeff. Didn't know it was you, but
So, and for the panel, any thoughts on that? I mean, what do you think about asking them to clarify, asking them, where do you want me to start?
You know, I think everyone's, how do I say this? Not everything works for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you got to find out what works. You know, we prepare candidates every single day for interviews with our clients. And, you know, that question, tell me about yourself, comes up a lot. And again, you know, you can go Jeff's route, which definitely works. Okay. But, you know, I've liked getting to a place where, because I think it's so much more, if you can really answer this question, I'm really good at, or I really love helping companies. I really love helping people this, okay? And so it's not about a title. It's not about a job per se, but it's about a solution. It's about a solution. I really love helping people figure out what to do next in their careers. I really love helping people figure out how to start their companies, to go from being a singular person to 3 people to 5 people to 20 people. I love doing that. And so, you know, you don't have to say, well, I don't know exactly how you would say that. Anyway, but that's just my style, my preference. So I think it, you know, if it works for Jeff and if it works for others, then by all means do it.
So we have, thank you, Liz. We have one more time for just one last question from Rachel. Rachel.
Hi, Professor Tanya. Thank you so much, you guys. I loved your workshop. I do have a couple questions. Michelle, you were speaking about 2 important things, empathy and authority, when it comes to telling our story. Empathy is very easy to share because, you know, most of us have been there in our journeys, but you didn't really speak on authority. Can you give me a little bit of insight on that?
Yes, absolutely. So 2 easy-ish ways to show authority would be reviews, like Google reviews and Yelp reviews. That's other people speaking on your behalf, testimonials, other people that can validate that you know what you're doing and you've already helped them on their journey. That gives you a ton of credibility. What was the other way going to be? Oh yeah, awards, which I don't think you should feature prominently. But again, at the end of your website, someone that you can point to on your whatever one pager at the bottom, in small, whatever. On our one pager, we have a link to our Google reviews also. We say, please check our work, validate our stuff, find out for yourself that we are what we say we are. But we also say our like 2 or 3 most important awards in little font at the bottom. But whoever is questioning whether they want to work with us, whether we actually know what we're doing, they're going to be able to find that. And then otherwise, your authority, if you do know what you're talking about, should kind of come out naturally. Hopefully you'll sound like you know what you're talking about.
Evolutionary, I think, is, in my opinion, it comes out over the course of time as you've earned it, as you've learned it. You know, I couldn't talk about this stuff, frankly, 15 years ago because I hadn't started a business that was successful. Today, I can say that I've now run a company that is 50 plus people, 4 locations, $20 million in revenue, blah, 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 best places to work, you know,
Blah,
whatever.
blah, blah, right? Just 20 million in revenue. No, but absolutely. What's that?
Sorry, I was just saying thank you. That answered the question perfectly. I did have, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are willing to share the copy. If so, okay, we'll go ahead and include that then in the YouTube, in the comment section of the YouTube. You'll be able to access that there. And Stephen did put the link to our YouTube in the chat, also the link to more workshops in the chat. And I'd like to pass it just back to the Proven team and anything you'd at the end here.
I will say that if I think, Mike, if you want to share the slide again, or actually everybody will get it anyway, my contact information is down there. If anybody emails me and you want to walk through your storytelling, I'm going to volunteer Michelle and Mike as well. We will do that individually with you if you want to share your stories with us, and we'll tell you if it sucks.
Thank you. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we can coordinate and do one of the Wednesday lab hours together. I'll connect with you guys about that and see if we can do something
Or if
like
it's or if it's great, we'll tell you that too.
that. Right. Anything else, Mike or Michelle, you'd like to leave the audience with?
I will just say, write it down. Write down the steps of your story actually on paper. Put down who is the hero, who is their villain. If there's multiple, that's fine. What kind of adversity do they face? What is your role? What can you actually help them with? And what is their life going to look like after working with you? And when you write that down, everything becomes so much more clear. Thinking it in your head is not the same. So write down those steps, and then you can put together your commercials for your companies or whatever your messaging. It's just going to all become so much easier.
Good advice. Yeah. Anything, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, practice. I still, if I were to redo my elevator pitch in the beginning, I probably would change it a little bit. But I think, yeah, practice is what's going to help. Practice with other people, get different opinions. Sometimes it's not always the best thing that you want to hear, but hearing from other people's perspective is important. I think when it comes to these, telling your story, elevator pitch, practicing interviews, right?
If you're really serious about it, record yourself on video if you're really brave. Use your iPhone or whatever you've got and just plant it just like they showed, and just record yourself doing your pitch. It's one of the most nerve-wracking, horrible things to do, but it will help you.
Agreed. Oh, well, thank you so much. All really wonderful, excellent advice. I appreciate it. I appreciate you making yourselves available and always, as always, giving back to this community and helping the future generations of entrepreneurs to be successful and to change the world, right? So thank you so much. And we will see everybody again at the next workshop. Take care from the rec. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.